start right away. Let's start by taking stock of what the world of internet looks like, right? We all know that internet has changed the way the world lives in the last decade or so, right? I mean, it has enabled us to do these things. We've successfully defeated and killed dead time. We don't anymore look out of the window and wallow in our thoughts. We are busy with our cell phones, right? So no dead time in our lives. Political campaigns are won online. Most of us don't line up at the banks anymore, and I know there is a demonetization joke somewhere here, but I'm not going to crack it. And cats. Lots and lots of cats on the internet, right? We all love watching cats. But let's move on to things which are a little bit serious. By early next year, almost half the world's population will be online, which means 1 out of every 2 people will have access to the World Wide Web, which is fantastic. But then let's take an example which is a little bit closer to home, right? India. India is the second most populated country in the world. But for the longest time, our internet penetration numbers were a meager single-digit percentage. Now, what does that mean? That means that while the rest of the world was wallowing in, like products like YouTube, Amazon, Netflix, Indians were still sending emails or booking flight tickets online, right? But today, the number of internet users in India is more than the entire population of United States. And not just that. We have seen 100% growth in the number of internet users, and even more fantastic is a 400% growth in data consumption in just the last 3 years, right? So then, let's look at some numbers. In India, we have about 130 million online shoppers, people who shop online. 190 million people have social media profiles, and a whopping 460 million people are accessing the internet on an average of 8 hours every day. Now, that's how big internet is. But then, I think the litmus test of any medium is how much the businesses are ready to spend on it, right? So the Indian digital advertising industry is worth a whopping $1.1 billion, which is already bigger than radio and cinema. And not just that, it's the fastest growing industry or the fastest growing medium in the country right now, growing faster than any other medium, radio, TV, cinema, anything. So needless to say, it's a perfect time to be in any digital profession right now, right? Cool. Now let's talk about something really, really interesting. Data. Now, data is a word that is used in my profession almost every single day. And digital as an ecosystem helps us not just make, but also store and mine through huge amounts of data every day. So let's look at how much data just does the world, generate every single minute. And we'll not look at all this data, we'll just look at 4 simple platforms that all of you know about. So every single minute, there are 4 million searches that happen. 2.5 million, photographs are liked on Instagram. Over 150 million emails are sent, so we know there is spam. And 300 hours of video is uploaded. Now, this is just 4 platforms out of all the data that is being made in the world. Now let's talk about India's appetite. Indians this year will consume 2,500 petabytes of data. That's about 2.5 billion GBs. But let's take that into perspective. So now I need you to imagine all the written works of all mankind in all languages, from all parts of the world, in all recorded history. That will make about 50 petabytes of data. Indians this year alone will consume 50 times that data. Now that's really a lot of data, right? And probably that's why people get very, like intimidated in the face of huge words in the digital ecosystem. These words can be like digital transformation, self-learning algorithms, dynamic optimizations, disruptive technology. I mean, if somebody throws these words to me, today even, probably I'll even get, like intimidated. But then the last, staying in this industry for the last 10 years have shown me that the world has become more local than global. I've seen businesses grow out of little garages on the back of optimization. India is brimming with startup fuel. So then, in such a competitive ecosystem like this, how does one truly attempt to create something of their own? As Sneha just mentioned, my name is Param, and I call myself an internet junkie. I'm here today to simplify the concept of generating an idea fit for the digital age, right? And I'd like to start by calling out that there are no digital ideas, only ideas. And digital is just a medium or a platform, a very powerful platform, which has the ability to take your ideas to the next level of greatness. Now, I'll be showing 3 simple rules which have personally helped me in creating solutions which are both scalable and viable in this age. So let's start. In all chaos, there's cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Now this puts a perfect context to my first rule. My world, the world of digital, is vast and complex. Internet is almost like a human brain, right? An organism in itself. It's made up of billion of nodes or neurons. It's, which is transforming either electrical information or signals to all parts of the world or the brain, all the time, right? When you look at all this, it seems very, very random. But if you look deep down, it's all intrinsically structured by the simplicity of a neuron or a bunch of simple protocols like the TCP/IP. I'm not going to go into the TCP/IP protocols, don't worry. But my journey starts at the root of this thought. Every complex creation must be made up of simple patterns. So then, to break down anything complex, like a complex equation, or a complex ecosystem, structure, or an idea, you need to probably start identifying the simple patterns within that. That's rule number 1. Identify simple patterns. This rule helps us break down things and gives us a starting point. Once you have identified your problem, you can then start looking at the solution. And so in a sense, basically, identifying simple patterns leads you to a lowest common denominator, right? Now, let's take an example to really understand this. Let's take the example of digital targeting. Now, I just spoke about the overdose of data that we have in my ecosystem, right? Now, in this case, the overdose of data is the hundreds and millions of things that people are doing online. Now, these people can be from a specific gender, a specific age, they can be from specific locations, they can be from different socio-economical backgrounds. Now, if I start looking at all of this data, top down, it'll just leave me with a huge bunch of Excel sheets, which is overflowing with city information, location information, and all at the same time, right? I'll not get anywhere from that. So then what do I need to start doing? Is start identifying simple patterns and reach my lowest common denominator. Now that lowest common denominator can be very, very simple. It can be as simple as people who like cars. And once I'm there, I can then start looking at a 25 to 30-year-old who's living in a metro city, probably doing car comparison prices searches on Google, who's buying car accessories on Amazon, and a bunch of other stuff, right? Once I've identified this bullseye, once I've identified this guy, I can then make multiple variations or lookalikes to kind of further extend my targeting. So then, whenever you guys go through a piece of information, try and put your own customized lens to it and find your lowest common denominator. Now, moving on to the second rule, which is don't chase the big idea. Instead, look for small human insights. Now, this is really, really powerful, right? Because what happens with us is we are always taught that look at the big picture, look at big ideas, try and figure out something big. But then we lose focus on small human insights. Because digital as an ecosystem is inherently scalable. You don't need to look for big ideas there. Because with the help of a small piece of code, you can either, you can solve for one person, 1,000 people, or 1,000,000 people. Then it doesn't make sense to kind of, look only for scalable idea or look at scalability in isolation. Now let's take an example of Airbnb. In 2009, Airbnb was on the verge of closing down. They simply weren't growing. When they sat down to figure out what the problem is, they found that all the 30, 40 locations that they saw had bad, low-quality images. This was their pattern, which led to an insight. The insight was that people want to live in beautiful-looking places. So then what did they do? They hired a camera, went to the sites of all those 30, 40 locations, and replaced all the bad quality images with high-resolution, beautiful images. Within a week, they saw an increase in the revenue. Now, today, they educate their consumers on how to upload great listings. That is how they found a scalable solution to their small insight, to their small human insight. So in a sense, if you have figured out a small human insight and if you have solved for a small human insight, and the digital ecosystem will be able to help you do that. Now moving on to rule number 3. But before that, have you guys heard of the term disruptive innovation? Now this is a term which gets thrown around very, very often. It's basically that magic lamp moment where these entrepreneurs are supposed to come up with huge innovative ideas which will just change the rule of the game. But then let's start looking at what's the definition of disruptive innovation. Okay, so disruptive innovation is basically an innovation that creates a new market and value network, right? And eventually disrupts an existing market and value network, thereby displacing the established market-leading firms, products, and alliances. Basically, you are making a new market from an existing market. Now, when I read this, it almost seems like to do disruption, I will have to, predict future user behavior. I'll have to know what people are going to do in the future. Now, how does that so how does that, happen? That's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen tomorrow rather than today. So then here's my idea of disruption. Disruption means changing the way people behave today. Just like Netflix changed the way people consume content. Or Uber changed the way people commute from one place to another. I don't believe they did it by knowing the future or by figuring out how will people behave in the future. They did it by asking why not. So rule 3, always ask why not. Now, what's common in all these 4 guys? They had a disruptive idea. And all of them asked why not, which led them to change the present user behavior. Let's take an example again of Flipkart. E-commerce was not Flipkart's huge idea. There were other e-commerce guys in the world when Flipkart came in the Indian scenario. But the Indian ecosystem had an inherent problem. One, Indians did not want to pay upfront. Second, Indians did not trust online payments. Nobody wanted to put their cards, online. They didn't trust it. So then while everybody else was busy asking, how can we make online payments easier? Or why are people not ready to pay online? Flipkart said, if people are not ready to pay online, let's take payments offline? Or why not take payments offline? Cash on delivery was Flipkart's big disruption. And today, almost 80% of all transactions in the Indian e-commerce happen on cash on delivery. If people only like one or two songs in a, like in an entire album, then why sell them entire albums? Why not sell them individual songs? Why not? And I think that's where most digital ideas succumb. Most businesses think about the how, the why, and the what. And these are important fundamental questions to any business. But then if you want to do genuine disruption, you will have to challenge the status quo and start asking why not. True disruption comes from asking why not. Well, so these were my 3 simple rules. Look for simple patterns because they help you optimize and prioritize the critical pieces of the puzzle. Second, look for small human insights, not just the big idea. Digital will help you make the small insight big. And third, always ask why not, because it helps you disrupt and reinvent the digital consumption. Now, since you guys now have these 3 simple rules, I'd really hope that you will apply these to your small little scribblings in your notebooks, to your ideas. All of you have ideas. All of you have different ideas. And see where they take you. Just like somebody very wise has said, the secret to getting ahead is getting started. And there is no time better than this to get started. Thank you.